Welcome back to the Wizard Weekly, where we talk about everything in gaming. As you can see, the lights are on in today's video finally, so you know what that means. I finally paid the light bill. PlayStation is still coming off of the celebration of 30 years at PlayStation since the first console launched back in Japan, and to obviously on top of the 30th anniversary console that many people are not likely got their hands on because of scalpers and shit. They also just today released a statement claiming that they're going to be continuing the celebration into the later years, all the way to 2026, with them having a PlayStation World Tour of having a live orchestra performing some of the greatest hits of PlayStation OSTs from some of their best first-party games. Obviously, some of their biggest IPs like God of War, Horizon, Gran Turismo. All these games are great titles that PlayStation has under their belt. But what also makes them really good and memorable is some of the best OSTs that they have playing, in those 3D headphones that they give you with the PlayStation 5. And now you'll be able to finally experience these amazing soundtracks live being played by really talented people throughout the course of this upcoming world tour. Now, like I said, this tour is going to be going on from 2025 all the way up into 2026, so there's a lot of wait time before you will actually see this live. But the first half of the tour they announced is going to be kicking off in Europe, and the first place I believe is Dublin. Yeah, here global tour launches with a world premiere on April 19th 2025 in Dublin, Ireland. So it's going to be an overseas thing for a while, but they plan on headlining over 200 cities across Europe, the UK, and then obviously the US of A. Unfortunately for my case and anyone that lives in the United States, they've yet to show any United States dates or any cities that they're going to be headlining yet. All we have here are these dates so far for the European cities that they're going to be headlining. You can go on Ticketmaster and even pre-order some of these tickets in some of these cities, but unfortunately the pre-sale isn't until 12 hours from now, so we don't know the exact price, but I can bet your bottom dollar it is going to be PS5 Pro-esque. I'd guess that for the front row seats because outside of obviously Sony being Sony and charging these prices, renting out a venue for any arena event is expensive as hell, so they got to make that money back somehow. And when was the last time you did a concert front row that didn't cost anything less than 3 digits? So yeah, but yeah, it's really dope because I love gaming OSTs. The OST that you're hearing right now is from Go Vacation, which is one of my favorite childhood games. And every now and then I try to find a PlayStation IP to put in my regular videos, but because the DMCA doesn't work out too much, even if you change the pitch, it doesn't work out. But I can definitively say that in the last 10 years at least, PlayStation has some of the best OSTs ever. Even some of the Astrobot themes that just came out, those are bangers. And this isn't the first time that PlayStation has ever performed any of their OSTs live. A couple years back they had the PlayStation in Concert tour that they had going on. Obviously the Game Awards, they had an orchestra where they played like God of War themes, and it's beautiful every time that any orchestra performs any PlayStation OST music. Like, I would definitely go out of my way to experience for once the like, just imagine a whole sea of an arena just chanting Old Norse, and that'd be a moment in time. I'd love to see that. So yeah, you can also use the code PlayConcert to unlock early access to the tickets going on sale tomorrow on Wednesday, October 16th. But the tickets for the general public goes on sale October 18th and beyond. So, and moving on, we need to briefly talk about whatever the fuck is going on over at Game Freak, the developers behind Pokemon, because I doubt that anyone that has access to the internet and have been able to read up on what's been leaked as far as Pokemon in these last couple of days will ever look at this game ever the same, and the same like nice light. I turned off my light, by the way, because it's about to get freaky as hell in here. So listen, earlier in the week, I saw when Game Freak, the developers behind Pokemon, they released a statement saying that, personal information of their developers and team have just been leaked on the internet back in August, and they made an apology, said that they're going to be beefing up their security and whatnot. And I decided to not talk about it that day because I thought that was where it ended. It's unfortunate people have their information leaked. Obviously, if that gets into the deep web, people are going to take advantage of that in malicious intent. So, I thought that was bad, but I didn't think it was enough for me to talk about it in the whole video. But boy, oh boy, these last couple of days, it's just been going worse and worse and just plain weird. So to kick off this downfall, you know, for the first couple of days, you know, all we saw were leaks of, you know, early builds of older Pokemon games. Source codes for old games like Black 2 and White 2 have just been out on the internet. Also, even code names for some of their upcoming games and unreleased games were put out there. Obviously, the Gen 10 game, the next Pokemon title, its code name Gaia, was put out there. They even found some unreleased battle multiplayer type of game, which is code named Snaps or Synapse. I don't know exactly how to say it, but you know, they said that that game has been worked on by ILCA, people that worked on the Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond remaster. And we even got a call back to the days of when Insomniac got leaked and an early build of their upcoming game Wolverine got leaked and put into the public's hands. But this time with Game Freak, an early build of the Pokemon Arceus Legends successor, according to the leaked title Pokemon Z through A, had an entire, basically the whole game is done and its build was leaked, and apparently someone has it out in the wild and have said that it's a really good game. Now, unfortunately, I haven't seen any screenshots or any gameplay of this leaked title, and to my knowledge, it doesn't even exist because the person that claims to have it said that they're not going to release any footage for it for the, I guess, respective Nintendo. But again, all this is really child's play compared to what we got in these last like 48 hours pertaining to these leaks. Now, that's all like the technical and gameplay build stuff that we got. What we also got out of these leaks was some lore tidbits that show some of the origins of Pokemon and human lore that the devs at Game Freak seem to have wrote, and just, I don't even know what the hell they're going to do with this, because Pokemon is a kid's game, so how are they going to implement all this? Anyways, if you want to pause the video and read this, just this little piece right here, you don't even got to read any more than this, but basically they showed the lore between the relations of Pokemon and humans in the old days, and how there were times where, you know, humans and Pokemons mated, and in a dark, twisted way showed the brutal history between humans and Pokemon before they became, you know, conjoined in what we see in the games, showing details on how some humans would just torture the Pokemon, and then how some Pokemon would pose as humans and then try to, well, not try, but actually, you know, make hybrid babies. And then in this particular story right here, it shows how that same Pokemon that got abused, at least his kind got abused, went back and did something to a woman that I'm not even gonna speak on. It is some crazy shit that you would not have expected from the Pokemon IP that's, you know, mostly intended for children to play, because, you know, we see these monsters and whatnot and we think that they're just, you know, intended to be that, just these little our little pocket monsters that do whatever we say. But they even name drop some Pokemon that we're never going to be able to look at the same again, like Typhlosion. Apparently he's a half-breed Pokemon that, when I said earlier there was a Pokemon that disguised himself as a human and then had relations with a woman, like, bro, all I could think about when I first read that was like, you know, I remember when Power World first came out, people were like, wow, Pokemon is so, you know, kid compared to this game. I wish Pokemon was like Power in the sense that it was for adults. Well, little did we know. Anyways, yeah, these Pokemon links are just nothing short of insane. And lastly, I wanted to briefly talk about something that was said by one of the lead developers over at Bethesda Studios. Now, this dude, Bruce Nesmith, he is Skyrim's lead designer, and he was a systems designer for Starfield, their latest game. And with Bethesda's games, which I love a lot, there's only two things that you can guarantee that you're going to get every time that you play one of these games. One, a weird-ass dialogue option, whatever that may be, and two, some of the most insane glitches ever known to humankind within a video game. Like the glitches in Bethesda games have become like a staple trope in all of gaming. Skyrim is over, what, 13-14 years old now, and that game still, in its third rendition of it being released, has some really insane glitches on modern hardware. And, you know, back in the day, players gave Bethesda the, you know, benefit of the doubt with the glitches that they saw in games like Skyrim or Fallout, since those games were really complex for, you know, their time. But now that we have their modern games like Starfield that has some of the same, you know, category of glitches, people are a little less forgiving for that kind of thing. You can definitely see it in the review scores and overall reception of Starfield with its buggy release and overall just lack of new content outside of the Bethesda, esque of video game design. So this dude, Bruce Nesmith, he decided to comment on the whole, argument of bugs and whatnot in games like Starfield in this interview with the Video Gamer. And he basically said some things that are pretty, common sense, like saying that all games in any state has some sort of bugs, especially more the complex ones like Bethesda's games that have so many dialogue cues and, different branches of story that any player can take on. Yeah, claiming that games are so large, so complex, particularly Bethesda games, because you have so many working elements trying to interact with each other. So, just giving some insight on the developer side of all these bugs. But he says something that's rubbing off the Bethesda, game enjoyers in the wrong way, claiming that, he'd be the first one to say that Bethesda games could have a higher degree of polish, but still goes on to explain that, these bug fixes are inevitable and just, always present within game development. Now, I'm not going to do the guy dirty, Obviously, that quote out of context would just make it seem like he's, shitting on Bethesda's work and whatnot. But he does go on to explain that, that level of polish does come at a price with pushing back a release. And we saw the pushback that fans had when Starfield was delayed almost 2 years after it was first announced. Actually, more than that, it was announced in like 2015. So that's a fucking whole generation. But Nesmith himself, being in the position that he's in, with as much influence on these games like Starfield or Skyrim, saying that the studio could use a lot of polish is really pivotal for how Bethesda should go cooking up games from now on. At this point, given the day and age we are with games and what people come to expect and what we've seen being thrown at us for $75 after tax and whatnot for the full price games, I just think that I'd rather wait a little while for a more polished and fleshed out version of whatever Bethesda game that they decide to throw at us next, whether it's the Elder Scrolls 6 or the next Fallout game, whenever that comes out. There's definitely a boost in the whole Bethesda name of games after the Fallout series that came out earlier last year. So following that, plus the whole new age of games where we have things like Unreal Engine 5 that some games are going to be supporting really soon, I just think that that level of polish that Bruce Nesmith speaks on should be taken more into consideration with their upcoming games. Of course, there's no such thing as perfect, and obviously bugs are going to be a thing we come to expect, especially with Bethesda game. But the fact that a mainline producer himself can say that there's a margin of error that needs to be taken into account is enough for a person like me to hope that Bethesda takes advantage of these words and actually beefs up their development team and at least how they practice. Hey, yeah, man, that's all I got for today, man. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode.